His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and President of the Olusegun Obasanjo Foundation, His Excellency the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, His Excellency the Commissioner of the African Union, dear Boubacar, Youth Representative, dear partners, dear organizers, and dear participants. His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo has reminded us that youth employment is a global issue. Indeed, according to the ILO, 202 million people, young people, were unemployed last year. And if you compare 2012 and 2013, this means an increase of 5 million youth unemployed. And if current trends continue, the global youth unemployment is set to even get worse, reaching more than 250 million in 2015. If you take these 202 million people in the world who are unemployed, among them you will find 74.5 million young people who are age 15, 24. And this is almost 1 million more than the year before. So the global youth unemployment rate has reached 13.1% globally. In Africa, if you look at the youth unemployment rate, you will find that it's lower. It reaches 11.8%. But if you compare the youth unemployment rate in Africa with the unemployment rate of adults in Africa, you will find that the unemployment rate for adults is 5.9%. So this means that the youth unemployment rate is double the unemployment rate of adults in Africa. But the reality is that the situation is even worse, because we are talking of formal employment, and the issue in Africa is all about unemployment, underemployment, and informal economy. So today, from Cairo to Cape Town, youth employment is one of the most pressing policy issues in Africa, calling for a bold political response and requesting a global methodology. Let's start from Cairo. Youth unemployment in North African countries remains the highest in the world, reaching more than 29% in 2013. This is more than twice as high as the global average. Let's see country by country, and we'll see that in Morocco, the youth unemployment rate reaches 19%. In Algeria, 22%. In Egypt, 25%. In Tunisia, 42%. And in many North African countries, educational attainment actually even increases the risk of joblessness, because the unemployment rates for those with tertiary education, who should be the less affected by unemployment, is even sometimes worse. And we should not forget that the situation of women in the labor market in the North African region is even worse compared to men. And if we continue our journey further, crossing to Cape Town, we'll see that despite the economic growth, which has continued to be solid in Africa, being estimated at 4.8% last year, this global economic growth, this African economic growth, has not impacted on the youth employment creation in our continent. So the issue is to know what can we do in Africa when you realize that in many countries of the African continent, the reality is that the informal economy is the largest provider of jobs for youth. For instance, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it was estimated by the ILO that 96.2% of young workers are informally employed. In Cameroon, the percentage is 88.6%, and in Zambia, no less than 99% of working teenagers work in the informal economy. And if young people work in the informal economy, it is simply because the modern sector and the formal segment of the economy are unable to create sufficient formal employment opportunities. So this is why, in the ILO, we call for a bold political response. We call for employment, and in particular youth employment, to be placed as a central objective of development policies, in particular macroeconomic policies. His Excellency the African Union Commissioner just reminded us that in sub-Saharan Africa, 10 to 12 million new young workers seek employment every year. And this is true, that African policymakers have recognized the challenge of creating gainful employment opportunities, in particular, since the landmark African Union Extraordinary Summit on Employment and Poverty Alleviation in Africa, held in September 2004 in Burkina Faso. But in terms of employment, we should look concretely now on the various sectors where we can make a difference in terms of employment creation, and once again, in terms of youth employment creation. And here, we will note that it is estimated that in sub-Saharan Africa, it is estimated that less than 10% of employment is found in industry, less than 10%. And if you look at all regions, the share of employment in industry is at least 20%. And in the case of East Asia, it exceeds 30%. So every African country should place employment creation as a central objective of their macroeconomic policies, but also of their sectoral policies, because jobs are created at the local level, country by country, sectors by sectors, city by city, village by village, enterprise by enterprise, and unit by unit, from multinationals to micro-enterprises and self-employment. Every decent job should count in Africa, and every entrepreneur should matter. And this should be taken into account by fiscal and custom policies. But in Africa, investment remains concentrated in capital-intensive extractive industries, with few forward and backward linkages with the rest of the economy. And this is where we can make a difference, because as His Excellency, the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNECA has reminded us, we can change the situation. We can advance economic transformation, and we can create decent jobs. For this, we need to value and promote entrepreneurship. And we should also put the emphasis on young women, because they can also make a difference, in particular in terms of entrepreneurship. And this is the very meaning of the 2012 ILO call for action to tackle the youth employment crisis, in particular through youth entrepreneurship, but also through sustainable enterprises. But for this, we should not forget that Africa does not lack diagnoses, proclamations, declarations, decisions, strategies, policies, and initiatives. So we don't think that one declaration after another is going to really make the difference. But we also need, first and foremost, the methodologies to implement those policies and declarations and initiatives. And this is why I would like to propose what I call the 7 C's methodology to promote youth employment in Africa. The first C is the concept. It is fundamental to start with the right conceptual framework. And in particular in Africa, where the challenge, as we said, is not unemployment as such, but informality, working poverty, and underemployment. And in 2013, in its job study, the International Finance Corporation has reminded us that the private sector must be at the core of any approach designed to address the jobs challenge, because this is the private sector which provides some 90% of the jobs in the world. So if the private sector provides 90% of the jobs in the world, we should wonder which is the percentage of the jobs provided by the private sector in Africa. And we should encourage and support them. The second C is coordination, because nobody can do it alone, and this is why we are here together. Effective policy implementation requires coordination amongst ministries, but also with the private sector, but also with the workers' organizations, the trade unions, but also with the youth organizations, and this is why you are here. But also coordination not only at the country level, but also at the sub-regional level and at the regional level. And this is why the Olusegun Obasanjo Foundation, which I would like to congratulate here, is organizing this meeting in the framework of the summit of the African Union, because nobody can do it alone, because we can make a difference, but we can make this difference if we work not as a single country, but as Africa as a whole, together. The third C is credit. Yes, because money is the heart of the matter, and we need to finance our policies. But for this, we need to make sure that everybody is on board, hence the need for coordination. And we need to get sure that we have the right conceptual framework. And the fourth C is competencies. And it's true that impressive strides have been made in expanding access to primary education in Africa. But we should also remember that on current trends, the region is still unlikely to meet the target of universal primary education by 2015. So we should put again and again the emphasis on education, primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, but also on apprenticeship, not only on formal education, but also on practical training. And the fifth C is care. Because yes, we strive for work, but decent work. Not only work, but decent work, which means that we have to take into account the workers' rights, and that we also have to take into account the social protection of the worker. And the sixth C is communication. Because if you don't care about communication, communication will take care of you. And this is why social dialogue is so important between governments, employers' organizations, and workers' organizations. But we should find the way, and it's not easy, but we should find the way in each country and at all levels to also incorporate the youth organizations when it comes to issues which matter to them. And the seventh C is control, because we need to monitor and evaluate systematically the policies which are implemented, in particular in favor of youth employment, because we need this feedback to improve policy, to improve the program, and to improve the design of the various projects and initiatives. But first and foremost, we also need this control, this monitoring, this evaluation to better allocate the scarce resources that we have in Africa. So once again, I would like to congratulate His Excellency President Obasanjo for his initiative. And I would like to congratulate you for your leadership, for your participation, for your commitment, and for your creativity, because that's what we need, and that's how we are going to make a difference in Africa. Thank you so much for your attention.